I don't know if earthquake counts as weather, but so that's kind of extreme. But the other thing is, I remember this one day, it was just raining so much, and I was in this area called Contreras. Like, it would rain so much that we had to go up a hill, and we couldn't make it up the hill very well because it was just raining so much. And my shoes, I had these blue insoles on under my shoes, and I remember like everything was just soaking wet just from all the rain, and it was starting to get painful. So I get home to the apartment and take my shoes off, and my feet are completely blue just because there was so much water, and it just, plus a little bit of frostbite kind of going on because it was a little cold. So I think that day was pretty bad in that area in Contreras because it was just so rainy, and the streets were flooded. Like, the cars could barely drive. Like, they were kind of swerving around just because it was like literally trying to drive through a river, and just because the drainage system wasn't very good. And we were at the top of the hill, so everything goes down from where we were into the valley of the city. So that was probably the most extreme weather that I had to deal with. Just some insane, crazy rainstorms, and you'd see like dead cats floating around and just crazy things like that. One thing I learned to do is I learned how to take a shower with 2 liters of water. That's pretty talented. I don't do that anymore, but I also learned how to wash clothes by hand, so that was pretty good. And then I learned how to live within my means. So we wouldn't have a lot as missionaries, so we learned how to budget, and I learned how to enjoy the simple things in life. And yeah, I learned how to overall be happy no matter what. I think probably would be the most significant skills that I learned on my mission. There's always the general example. I'm pretty sure I've heard this once, whether I said it myself or heard it within another missionary. But in Spanish you can say like, I'm embarrassed, which you really would want to say like, oh, estoy avergonzado. But a lot of times people say estoy embarazado, which would mean like I'm pregnant, which doesn't really work. So I've heard that a couple times, and I can't remember if I said it myself. But just little things like that, I think, or sometimes those cognates where you try to translate the word from English into Spanish and it's a completely different thing. Just little things like that will probably be the language mistakes that I've seen. I had horse once. Didn't know it was horse while I was eating it. I've had cow stomach. I've had cow brain. I've had pretty much every part of a pig. So I think that those are kind of the most unique things, I guess. You don't eat cow stomach every day. Or horse meat. I was kind of shocked when I found out it was horse meat, but I would say that those are probably the most exotic things I ate. Everything else was pretty good. Definitely bringing a coat, just because you don't need a snow coat, but a nice rain jacket, because it does rain a lot, it does get cold. So having kind of like warmer clothing, like even long sleeve shirts and a suit coat is really nice to have, because it does get pretty cold. And that would be probably the biggest thing I would suggest, getting good shoes, especially as a missionary, because in my mission there's no cars, it's an all walking mission. And so having good shoes that are able to endure water, because if you can't endure the water, then you're not going to last very long during the rainy season. So that's what I would suggest more than anything, having a warm coat and some good waterproof clothing and shoes, lots of extra socks. One of the greatest life lessons I learned was, the gospel changes people. Because I look at myself before my mission and after my mission, and the way I see it is there's almost like, I can't even remember how I used to be as a person. I still have some of the same hobbies, but the gospel really can change people, because I've seen people that were, drunk, drug addicts, that were involved in some crazy bad things, and just being able to see them do a complete turnaround in their life has been significant, and being able to see the power of what the gospel's done in my life has been a really, really significant thing. So I think that's definitely the biggest life lesson that I learned, and also the power of faith and believing. Because what a mission is all about is miracles, and even if the miracles are really small, like that's one thing too you learn, is to learn to recognize the small things in life. Because like for a lot of times we don't think of things that are miracles, but really they are. Like the fact that someone accepts us to listen to the gospel, that's a miracle. And the fact that someone reads their scriptures and comes to church, that's a miracle. So our lives as members, a lot of times we take for granted, like the fact that we can partake of the sacrament, that really is a miracle, that we're able to, be forgiven for our sins and have them erased. That's a pretty significant miracle. So I think learning to recognize those little miracles, that they're everywhere, even if they're maybe not as big as what we were expecting, but just the blessings and the miracles are everywhere. So I think, and also one thing I also learned too is the value of studying the scriptures and the power that they have. Just because, in the mission, I remember because I was a district and zone leader, and so we'd have to like counsel with the missionaries, interview them, and do reports with them, see what they're doing. So what we would do is we would use the scriptures as a teaching tool, and just to be able to see how we could literally substitute their name in a verse and their area or one of their investigators in a verse, and be able to see how it applies to their life so perfect was just amazing to me. Even just still today, that's something that I see in my life with the scriptures, how they really applied to us. Because before my mission, you hear the scripture mastery songs, you go to seminary, but it didn't really, I guess, what's the way to say it, it didn't really come alive for me until I was on my mission, seeing it in other people, how the scriptures applied directly to them, and how scriptures would just pop in your head when you're in the middle of a lesson that you hadn't read for 3 months, but all of a sudden you remember it clear as day. Just things like that, I'd say were probably the best life skills I learned on my mission. So one of the most spiritual experiences I had, I think, was on my mission. As I was a new missionary, getting ready, learning the language. I remember one day my companion was with me, and we were catching a bus to go back to our apartment, and he told me, all right, you need to contact the entire bus. I was like, I don't speak Spanish well enough to do that. I can't do that. That's not happening. He's like, no, you should do it. And I was going to tell him no way, but then I had this feeling that, maybe I should do it. It won't do any bad, so I decided to do it, contact the entire bus. And I don't remember exactly what I said. In my broken Spanish, I think I said, something to the effect of, we are missionaries of the church. We have the gospel, and it's been restored. And I remember we went around asking everyone in the bus if they wanted to listen, and everyone said no except for one person. And the one person that said yes was Carlos. And I remember the first time we taught Carlos, we asked him, well, why did you decide to listen to us? And he said, well, there was one thing that you said that really caught my attention. I was like, well, what did we say? And he's like, well, you said you have the restored gospel. And then he told us that his whole life he'd been, kind of studying the word gospel, and which in Spanish is evangelio. He wanted to know, what does it mean? Where did it come from? And things like that. And so he'd done a lot of research, and just the fact that we had phrased the presentation in exactly the right way, specifically for him, it's really a miracle for me to be able to see him progressing and how quickly he accepted the gospel and was able to get baptized. It was really a miracle. And another cool experience that I had was in my second area. We were teaching this investigator named Juana, and she had a store where she sold food and everything like that. And usually the biggest sale day was on Sunday. But we taught her about the Sabbath day, and she was like, well, I don't know what I can do, if I can, close my store. But she decided to close her store Sunday. And she told us about the experience that she had, because she said, when I closed the store Sunday, the Saturday before that, I actually sold more than I'd ever sold before. And my customers, they came to me, the ones that usually come on Sunday, and they were talking to her, and they were like, why'd you close on Sunday? So then she said, well, she mentioned that she was listening to missionaries and things like that, but she also said, well, I just feel like, it's better to prepare yourself on Saturday for Sunday. So get everything you need Saturday, so that Sunday you don't need to do it. And then all her customers were like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So they were all able to do that as well. And that was really cool to see how quick she was able to progress and to be able to demonstrate, what the Sabbath day is, as far as sharing her testimony about it and being able to see her progress. That was pretty awesome. Another thing too that was really cool for me was to be able to see how God answers prayers. I remember there was a family we were teaching it was my fourth area in East Calco. So we were teaching this family. They were less active, so there was only one name on the list, and we found the name, and we went to teach him. And so his name was, the family was the family Cortez family. So we're teaching the family, and the wife, she said that she literally had been praying a week ago. Ironically, she was in the Catholic Church, in a different church, praying for guidance, to do with her life. And so we came in, and they literally just seemed so excited, so ready to hear us. And we were able to teach, and we found out that, that they had 2 daughters, and that the daughters hadn't been baptized. So we were able to teach them, and they were able to get baptized fairly quickly. And it was just really cool how quickly they were able to accept the gospel and how we were able to see that change in that family, and how, they literally had been praying a week ago because the Let's Act was, they had left the church for whatever reason and they didn't know how to come back. But the fact that we were able to help them find the way to come back was really just a big miracle to me. It was a really spiritual experience. Another spiritual experience that I was able to have was in my second to last area. We were teaching this investigator, and he had a lot of changes that he needed to make. His name was Carlos. He had a lot of things he needed to change. He needed to stop drinking. He needed to change his lifestyle a little bit, and we were able to see him change. It was a long process. I remember the first time we taught him, we got him ready for baptism, and then I remember the day before his baptism, he'd already passed his interview, already, made all the changes necessary. But I remember we talked him the day before baptism, we teach him, and then we go home, and then the day of his baptism, we go to pick him up, and we notice something's wrong. He wasn't there. He said that he wasn't there, but he actually was. And then we came back later, and we found out that he had collapsed. He went and drank the night before his baptism, so that was kind of hard. But this really taught me the importance of persevering, and we continued to teach him. And so even after he had failed, he decided to keep listening. And 6 weeks later, we were able to work with him even harder, and we were able to get him to be baptized. And for me, that was just a really spiritual experience, because it was even harder for him the second time, because we were seeing how the adversary was working against him. But to be able to see Carlos and his growth, to see him change, and to be able to see him receive the priesthood and pass the sacrament after his baptism was really cool for me. Just because, with all that we'd been through, we'd been teaching him for about 6 to 8 months, working with him, and it was tough because he had a lot of addictions that he had to leave behind. But being able to see him change was a big miracle for me.